Hi, I wanted to take some time today to talk about our company mission statement and values and what that means for you, okay? So I don't know whether this is new employees that are going to be watching this or potential owners or current owners, tenants, potential tenants, but I wanted to take a moment to fulfill one of our values, which is education, and educate you all a little bit about what our company stands for and what that means. So our mission is to deliver peace of mind, and that's something that I came up with because I was trying to figure out what is it that people want most when they interact with our company. And number two, I couldn't remember anything longer than that. So it had to be simple for me, and it had to be simple, something simple that we could focus on, so that hopefully we could actually deliver it by continual focus on this. So delivering peace of mind. I wanted a certain end effect as we interact with people, whether those people be owners, tenants, ourselves, the employees here, vendors that we work with. When they go to bed at night, at least if they've just interacted with us, hopefully they sleep a little better, okay, a little more peacefully. We've delivered peace of mind. Now obviously peace of mind is a little more complex than just your interactions with your property manager at whatever level you're interacting with them on, but that's the idea. See, I believe that if we can deliver peace of mind, it's a kind of win-win solution, because it's something that if we give it to you, we can get it back, and that's a lifestyle choice, okay? That's what we want. It creates a positive feedback loop where, you know, I give it to you and you give it to me, you know? And together we can do more working in that realm with that idea and that mindset than the potential very much opposite type of interactions that often pervade this industry. So that was the idea of that mission. So in really thinking about like how do we do that, I wanted to focus really on the foundation of that and not be too complicated, because again I can only grasp a couple things at a time. And so I came up with 3 values that I feel are kind of foundational. And the acrostic T, T-E-E, I'll show a picture on the video here, but essentially I created this idea of a golf ball on top of a T. And the T stands for transparency, the E for empathy, and the second E for education. So I believe that those 3 things will actually be foundational if employed in the right way. Those 3 things alone can bring us well into being, delivering the peace of mind that we intend on, okay? Along with those things, along with systems that support both the mission and the values that we seek to accomplish the mission with. So, and I visualize a golf ball as our mission, delivering peace of mind, with the T that the golf ball sits on as you're getting ready to drive it, T-E-E. And then I envision the golf club, which you can see behind the golf ball and the T, and I think of that as the systems that we use to deliver this, okay? So transparency means that you tell the truth even if the truth is bad news and no one wants to hear it, and you know people will be upset by it. You tell the truth because even though it might be painful to tell the truth right now, what it means is that we can get on to providing a solution once we've acknowledged and been completely transparent in what the issues are. We don't have to avoid or dodge or hide, because that's all negative energy that, instead of being a positive cycle of change, becomes a negative cycle. Something that we're all thinking about. Well, what's wrong? What aren't they telling me? What do I need to hide? You know, what don't they know? What do they know? All these little things that just simply distract from providing the excellent service that you desire to do and creating the positive, trust-filled interactions that we want at every single level, from employee interactions together, to vendors, to owners, to tenants. So, the idea of transparency, we admit the mistakes that we make. There's no room for ego in a high-performance team, okay? And usually when we think about team, we think of only the team members, the employees here. But I think that we would like to consider that we're all working together. If we can agree on the purpose that everybody's trying to provide each other peace of mind. We can bring people together, and so owners aren't just trying to operate this property for the cheapest possible. Tenants aren't just trying to get something out, to get whatever they want out of the transaction, but everyone's trying to come together. And when you do that, at first sometimes it seemed a little more expensive one way or the other, or I didn't, you're working together for a common purpose. Things start to happen though that are synergistic, like maybe the tenant takes care of the property a little bit better. For the owner. So the owner saved money that way by maybe spending a little extra, being willing to see the tenant's concern. These things kind of work in a positive circle. So sometimes the most presenting issue is not not the issue that you thought it was. If you can look at it systematically, oftentimes what you do will be different. And the vision and values are what organizes the system that allows us to get the results that we get. That's why it's so important to talk about it and think about it. So ultimately, the effect of high transparency and applying that is that the trust in the relationship is much higher. And that gives us the framework for working together. The second value is empathy. Empathy is when you have a sense of what others are feeling. And many people don't even know how to experience empathy. For whatever reason. A lot of times it's just, how you grew up, you model certain things from your parents. And also, to the degree that you've had a lot of trauma in your life, very often trauma will create the inability to have any kind of feeling, let alone an empathetic feeling for someone else. Because you start to feel like feelings are painful in general, positive or negative, so you don't feel anymore, disconnect. So a lot of people do that, but we seek to insert empathy into the interactions, okay? A lot of people, I think you've heard it said, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so empathy is one more thing that increases the trust in the process of what we're doing here. And trust is so vital. It makes everything better. So I actually read a book called The Upside of Irrationality by a behavioral economist called Daniel Ariely. And one of the interesting experiments he did was he actually would intentionally irritate people. And that would be like the opposite of empathy. And these were like ordinary people that weren't really bad. Like you wouldn't consider them to be like dishonest, okay? But the same person that was not irritated would not take advantage of a situation, whereas the person that was irritated would take advantage of the situation. They create these situations where they allowed someone to take advantage of them, and then they would test either intentionally being rude to the person beforehand or not. And what they found was, 70 to 80% of people wouldn't take advantage of a difficult situation if they were feeling respected and there was a trusting relationship and an empathetic relationship. I thought, and I don't quote me on this, don't go read the book and then tell me I'm wrong, but it was basically like 90% of people, or a really high percentage of people, it would totally flip, would take advantage of a situation when they felt like that person was a jackass, or they didn't like that person, or they weren't cared for, which is what empathy is. People sense that you have taken the time to step into their experience for a minute, And so what I'm trying to get at is that especially for landlords, empathy is important. It's important that we show empathy to your tenants because it's going to make a big difference in how they treat your property, you know, and how they treat the whole situation, whatever that might be. Because if they're feeling taken advantage of, or they're feeling someone was rude to them or didn't or doesn't care about their needs, they're going to basically allow those feelings to exact revenge. Okay, and revenge, according to this study that I'm referencing, had nothing to do with you know, like going out and killing somebody or going out and like dramatically hurting somebody. It's just a lot of times it affected the natural range of behavior that someone could have quite dramatically. So it might not have been rageful, but it still was a kind of a vengeful behavior that these people exhibited. And that was completely normal for ordinary people that we would consider totally ordinary. You know, it was within the social range of acceptability, but still it made a dramatic difference to the person to the person receiving the vengeful behavior. So for us, we realize that to mitigate risk, relationships really mitigate risk in a lot of ways. And you know, having that empathetic relationship and caring. Now, a lot of times there's this idea, people feel like if I'm empathetic, then I'm going to give someone whatever they want, even if they're being unreasonable. And there's this idea, this fear of empathy. Like you feel like you have to be mean to someone, even if you disagree with them, or you feel like they're being, or they are, and this is often the case. Someone a tenant is unreasonably asking something, and one of the rules that I've kind of created is that we always seek to find a solution even if it isn't us delivering it. So today, a tenant was asking us to come and plow their driveway, okay? And it's been crazy. There's, what, a foot of snow out there, you know? And it is a duplex. We don't offer any plowing services for properties under 5 units. And so I had a choice. I could have just said, you know what, screw you, we're not doing it. And we aren't doing it. But I didn't, but what I did as I interacted with this person was that number one, I identified with their concern. And I said, you know, I'm sorry to see the situation you're in right now. And then I provided several potential solutions. Hey, can you work with the person, you know, that you live with to maybe alternate, you know, shovel the driveway? You know, here's some other ideas to solve your main need of needing the driveway. You know, your valid need of needing the driveway clear, you know. I even sent him some tips, driveway shoveling. I don't know, he might have thought that was stupid, but I was trying, you know. I was trying to make him feel served. And he came back and said, you know what, I would be willing to pay for it. If, you know, could you provide the service and I pay for it? And basically what we did is just do some research and give him some vendors that he could contact directly so that we weren't inserting ourselves into something or complicating them. And we didn't have to do any of that. I could have just said no, and I suspect that if I would have done that, he might have dug in, started looking at city regulations, trying to find his angle, you know, how can I get these guys to do this? Those jackasses, you know, I live in a multifamily building and I expect my driveway to be shoveled, you know? There's two ways this could have gone, and I've seen it go the other way too many times because people weren't thoughtful enough to make a thoughtful response. And it's not that hard, but it makes a huge difference. And that's why I say empathy is such a big part of delivering what we want to deliver. And the third part is education. The third value is education. We have transparency, empathy, and education. Those three values, I believe, help us deliver that peace of mind that we're seeking to deliver. And what education does is it's kind of a long-term effector you know, it usually doesn't get immediate results. But over time, education improves all of us. It improves the quality of our relationships, improves who we are as people. It changes our character. It changes our skill level. It changes the interactions because, you know, you change your skills and your character. You know, suddenly you have new options for communicating, for doing work. You get more work done faster. You know, that has a whole waterfall effect in everything that you do. People are more satisfied and they feel like you are dependable, and suddenly, you know, they feel a little more peace of mind. You know, those things all happen with education. And so it's an upfront expense oftentimes. You know, you have to spend time, sometimes money, in purchasing resources, you know, time talking with people. You have to do that work. But it's a worthwhile investment because it's an investment in people, okay? And education is universal. So it's not just like I as a business owner am trying to educate my employees. This is a universal value. So the employees should be educators as well. And I am here in front of this camera to educate, okay? I am going to make a consistent effort to try to get the people working with me to do the same, because it trains them to educate, you know. It develops their communication skills, and it provides a necessary product because they have specific information that I don't even know because they're doing stuff. I don't do the whole business. I have people doing different things. They can provide that knowledge to tenants and owners. And so we're educating tenants and owners, you know. I just mentioned this whole thing working with the guy wanting us to shovel his driveway. Well, I was trying to educate him, you know. I wanted to, I mean, education happens at a lot of different levels. Sometimes it's just educating that, hey, you can trust me, you know, because I'm acting trustworthily, you know. But also it can be more direct. Like I sent him an article, some information on snow plowing, on snow shoveling. I guess it might seem kind of stupid, but again, you know, that was my intention, so I did it. You know, manuals and processes are an education because we're learning an important system, you know. And so by creating a manual, then anybody can go do it, and we can easily have everyone in the organization know something or have ready access to knowledge, which then allows us to deliver a consistent product, which is part of the peace of mind. Knowing, you know, something's consistent, then you know it's going to work out. And so you know, we do offer incentives. I'm still developing those exactly what they are, but basically, you know, for reading books and things like that. And important, it's not always maybe direct, you know, like on property management, but basic business-related self-help things that help people grow and have a growing mindset and interact, you know, in the business, and even interact personally in such ways that they get more energies to interact in the business. And that's a part of the positive cycle, is making sure that people understand the importance of drawing energy from their personal life, which then gives them energy to be more successful in their business life, which then gives them hopefully energy to be more successful in their personal life because they have more money. So anyways, there's those little cycles everywhere, and education is part of the energizing cycle. It sharpens and makes things work smoother and better. So the last segment, part of this, is the systems. Because if the systems in the business make things so chaotic that the value of delivering peace of mind is more difficult to achieve, and those values of transparency, empathy, and education are not supported, those systems can undermine it. So how do you set properties up? How do you start and end certain relationships? How do you do work orders? All these things have long sets of steps that oftentimes, if they aren't systematized, are just kind of left to random chance. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. That's not conducive to a lot of what we're trying to achieve here. And of course, we're constantly in a state of improvement, and nothing's perfect, but we are very clear about what we want to achieve. And we're going to continue to improve until we really feel like, wow, at least in this area, we've achieved, we're seeing this in the people that we work with, all the way through the whole, the whole line of the vendors, owners, tenants, employees. So anyways, thanks for listening to my ramblings. I hope that you were educated, hope that you felt some empathy from me, hope that you felt that I was being transparent enough, and have a great day. Hi, I'm Andy Morris with Realty Trust Services, and I just wanted to touch base with landlords about insurance for landlords. This past winter has definitely been a difficult one for a lot of landlords in Northeast Ohio. I've seen ice dams, water backups, freezes on houses while tenants were away, and I've seen damages of a few $100s, some all the way up to 30,000 plus in terms of what insurance was paying out. So I wanted to talk a little bit about insurance for landlords. And previously, we had not always required that owners give us copies of their policy. What we found is that, it is really important that owners have on file with us their policy, so that when we have an emergency, we aren't having to to make a guess about which contractor to use, and thus delaying essential services that need to be gotten out right away to stop further damage to the property. So if we're not sure which tenant contractor to use and we're calling around and we're trying to get a hold of an owner late at night, or get a hold of an insurance agent, what's covered, what can we actually pay for, that's delaying getting someone out there. So, by having that data available, we can better make informed decisions. And of course, regardless, normally the first step is to stop whatever's happening that's continuing to damage the house, and then there's the whole restoration. So there's two parts of that anyways, but still, having that information helps us do that. So one of the things that we've noticed, we do a few things to help make things go faster. We do have 24-hour dispatch for emergencies, and we do have relationships with contractors, restoration contractors and things like that, to do insurance work as well. Some of the things that you need, when we were contacting owners actually, we found that a lot of the owners really didn't have good information about what their insurance even had. They didn't know their deductible. They didn't know how much they had to pay out of pocket. They didn't know what their insurance covered. They didn't know that their insurance didn't cover when it was vacant. Some of them found out they didn't even have insurance at all when we went through an entire database and were contacting these owners. So let this video be a reminder. Why don't you call your insurance agent and look up your policy to see what's on it. Some of the things that are really nice to have is loss of rent coverage. It's a little more expensive, but if you can get it on your property, at least if something happens and the tenant has to move out and you lose rent for 5 months, they'll actually pay that. You really want to understand what happens when a tenant moves out, because coverage changes and you actually usually need a new policy. There's a certain period afterwards. So you really want to understand that. You want to make sure that it has water backup, because we do have a lot of issues, especially if you have an older house in northeastern Ohio. Sewer backups happen. Roots grow into drains, and it's just the nature of owning a house in this area. If you are unsure about insurance, we'd be happy to insure you, to refer you several professionals that could give you quotes and talk you through a policy. A lot of landlords, insurance is a classic issue for landlords, because a lot of insurance underwriters don't even want to do rental properties, so properties that could be vacant, anything like that. It's a special niche. So you would definitely want to find somebody, an agent that has some knowledge on this and can assist you and educate you a little bit about what you're getting and what you should get. One of the things that we're doing and that we've recently just added as a policy based on experience is that we're requiring all tenants to have tenant insurance. Now, as part of the changes we've made, we actually our software, we offer that through our software. And it's actually quite a nice insurance policy. Generally, the cost is between $9 and $15 a month, so it's nominal. And when it comes through us, we're able to actually ensure that the tenant has named the landlord in their policy, so that things like there's actually coverage for damage to your property caused by tenant negligence. So it's basically helping double insure you, as well as take care of a lot of the issues that happen when you have an insurance claim. So let's say that it's not that your tenant's fault at all, but there's a damage to the roof from a storm that then leaks and messes up, not only messes up the house, but they have to get a hotel. Well, their hotel is now covered, so they're not asking you for that. And no matter how many times you put in the lease, by the way, they're still going to ask you for it. And they may still try to sue you for it. And they may still get it, even though contractually you're not obligated, because the judge feels sorry for them. So having this insurance it not only helps you when you need it most, you're not getting your rent, and then suddenly you have maybe other expenses, a deductible, they're asking you for your hotel to be paid. None of this is covered by your insurance. Normally, when you go from, say, living in a house to not living in it, your insurance stays about the same. It's just that a lot less is covered. So none of the stuff in the house is covered with the tenant, because the insurance companies have learned that tenants may have a higher likelihood of using an insurance claim as an ATM machine to get money for their stuff that wasn't worth as much as they claim. So their stuff is never covered, and we fully disclose that in our lease. We've always done that, but this tenant insurance basically helps practically in a situation where you need it most. So that's one of the things that we offer, and it's one of the ways that we help protect our owners. And we definitely recommend any owner, whether they're with us or not, that they require tenant insurance. Also, another thing to note regarding why to require tenant insurance is many landlord policies will give you a break if you require tenants to have tenant insurance. So that's part of something we monitor. It's built into our software, and it's one way that we help landlords when they need it most. Hi, I'm Andy with Realty Trust Services. Thanks for watching this video. I just wanted to chat real quickly about tenant insurance. And first of all, I'll tell you just a quick two little scenarios that have happened recently as I shoot this video. We had a large insurance issue where the tenants had left for a week for a vacation. They came back, house had somehow, water had, something got frozen. They had turned it down the heat a little bit. I don't know exactly what happened. No one knows. But the pipes froze. Water went everywhere. It had been leaking for days. Ceilings had collapsed. Their stuff was damaged. They couldn't live in the house. And although the owner did prorate their rent that they had already paid for that month, they got some of that back. They had an emergency situation. Hotel was not paid for because the lease does not cover any of that. Their property was not paid for because the lease specifically says if your stuff is not insured, it's not paid for. And they didn't have tenant insurance. So these were two professionals, and they do okay for themselves. But they didn't have a lot of extra money to spend on all this stuff, and there were some important things that they lost. Not only that, they weren't able to come back in the house for a month and a half. And they had a very rough time. And there was nothing that we could do because the owner didn't have the money to pay for it. They weren't covered, and they'd been advised in their lease. It says, you are not covered You need to get tenant insurance. They didn't. So that's an example of people who didn't do that. And it was a very bad situation, made worse because they did not have tenant insurance. Tenant insurance is very inexpensive, usually between $9 to $15 a month. And it really gives you a lot of peace of mind. Another example where it did work out is we had an issue with a sewer backup, and there was raw sewage in the basement. We came in, did the work to fix it, but the tenant had materials in the basement that, or their own property in the basement that was damaged. And so they had tenant insurance. They came in, adjuster came out, and they wrote them a check. So they were restored, okay? Tenant insurance, as mentioned, can help with your hotel expenses and if there's an emergency. Oftentimes tenant insurance will cover animal liability. So if you have a dog and it bites somebody, and the way things work, you could get sued even if that person isn't hurt. It'll oftentimes cover dangerous dogs where the owner's insurance policy won't. In addition, it will cover things like damage to landlord's property often, depending on the policy. So that, did you know that if you cause damage, the landlord's insurance policy will cover the damage to the property, to the house, and then it may come and sue you as a tenant. So you need your own insurance to cover you, if that makes sense. And that's not to mention your personal property. Your personal property is only one part of it, but in a bad situation, you need to have some peace of mind that these things are going to be taken care of. You don't really think much about it or need it, but trust me, you'll be really happy to have it. Now, in times previous, our leases did not require tenant insurance, but when we've seen how much more smooth things goes when they go wrong because of tenant insurance, we've decided that moving forward, if you're watching this video, if you end up signing a lease with Realty Trust Services or renewing, we're requiring tenant insurance. And it's just because it's really good for tenants, it's good for owners, it's good for it just makes things smoother, gives everyone more peace of mind. So along with this requirement, we actually, it's not something that we really make a profit on, but in our software, we have a vendor that offers tenant insurance, and they set it all up and it just goes right into your account. So you can literally click a button and get it. It's real easy. If you're a current tenant, it's right in your portal. And you can just, there'll be a little advertisement if you log in. If you don't have a login, call our office at 440-427-0123 and ask for a login to your online account with us. If you're soon to be a new tenant, we welcome you, and we welcome working with you to have a safe experience renting our houses and full of peace of mind. So have a great day. Bye-bye. Hello, my name is Andy Morris, and I do property management with Realty Trust Services. I want to talk a little bit about how to handle utilities in the great city of Cleveland. Cleveland is a great cash flow market, and there's a lot of investors who purchase houses in Cleveland. But there are a lot of intricacies about how to deal with the utilities in Cleveland. Now, in single-family houses, it's standard for tenants to pay all their own utilities, and that's expected, and they understand that. However, there's a big difference between the public utilities and then the Cleveland utilities. So for gas and electric, those are both public. I mean, those are both private. I mean, they're not city utilities, and so they can be put into the tenant's name pretty easily, and there's no issues because once they're in the tenant's name, the landlord's not really responsible. However, with water and sewer, that's a very different issue because Cleveland water and the sewer that goes along with it and the water bill is something that even if you put it in the tenant's name, ultimately the owner's responsibility. And if the tenant doesn't pay, it's actually going to get stuck on your property tax, and you'll be forced to pay, or they'll actually years later will end up they could actually foreclose on your house for non-payment of utilities. So it ends up being quite tricky when you're dealing with the actual the water and sewer on your house. So as far as how we deal with them, there's a few different ways. We work with owners to deal with that water sewer bill. So in Cleveland, if you're doing Cleveland water, the bill only comes out every 90 days, which for a lot of the tenants is really difficult for them to even pay anyways. They end up getting behind because they maybe aren't great cash managers. So when that bill comes out every 90 days, it's just too much. They didn't have an extra $300 to $500 that month when it came in. So so we deal with it in 4 different ways. Sometimes, and a lot of it depends on the landlord and the situation and the tenant. So how the landlord wants to handle it. So tenant puts it in their name if possible is one way. So the tenant just sticks it in their name. Oftentimes there's a large deposit. Many tenants can't afford that. So they can afford the deposit to move in, they can afford the rent, but they can't afford the extensive deposit that the water department. Okay, so that can create a problem for getting someone to move in. And for us, when we have a tenant move in, we have a checklist, and before they even get keys, they have to show that the utilities are in their name, if that's required. Okay, so so for some people, tenants, that means that they thought they could afford the house, but then when they get ready to move in, they can't. And we have to work that out with the owner. Okay, so the second way of dealing with tenants in the water and sewer in Cleveland is that we actually keep it in the owner's name, and we forward that. We have those bills forwarded to us, and then we email that to the tenant or mail it to them, and we also put it on their account. We'll actually save a copy right in their account online. Right. And the beauty of this is that we can actually see the bill. It doesn't rack up, where sometimes we've seen tenants rack up bills of over $2,000 and we didn't even know about because we weren't receiving the bill. So we're able to see the bill, we're able to see if they don't pay it, and we're able to see abnormal usage, which lets us know things like, is there more people living there, or is there a leak in the house? So that really helps us manage the property better by sending it to us and allowing it to forward it to the tenant. Also, the benefit of doing it this way versus the next way I'm going to talk about is that it actually, if they do not pay it, eventually, usually, it will get shut off. Okay, we've seen it go up pretty high, but sometimes like into the thousands. But a lot of times they'll shut it off when it gets to several $700, which is nice because our only way of collecting it, if they don't pay, is to evict them. Send them 3-day notices, call them, but ultimately, if they still don't pay, we would have to evict them. And that's not really a great option. Like, well, either you pay your utility bill or we evict you. It's not a great alternative for the owner and not for the tenant either. But what we found is that the utility bill shuts off the water, the utility company shuts off the water, then that is, the tenant oftentimes pays it and restarts it again. And that's a much better alternative than us losing a tenant that was otherwise paying all their other bills, but not the water. We're not, you might ask, can you as the management company or as me as a landlord turn off the water? No, that's illegal. You can't turn off the water because it's actually considered a self-serve eviction. Don't ask me why the water company can turn off the water when we can't, but that's the way it is. It's just the law here. So that's actually probably our most preferred option. The other option is some landlords actually keep it in their name and then they pay the water bill and then we bill it to the tenant to get reimbursed to the landlord. And the reason some landlords choose this is because if the water bill's in their name and the tenant's supposed to be paying and it doesn't, and it goes behind, then they feel that reflects personally on them. I'll just tell you, I've never once seen a water bill on someone's credit report. So if you're worried about it going in your credit, I don't want to say this publicly, but I kind of am because this is going on YouTube. It's not going to, it's almost for sure not going to affect your credit. I've never seen it affect someone's credit, and I've seen a lot of credit reports. I've never once seen a water bill on anybody's credit report. I've seen many hundreds, if not thousands of credit reports. I've never seen that. So So you probably don't have to worry about the water being on your credit report. Ultimately, the reason that they don't really have to work that hard to collect against you is they're always going to get their money, because they go in as a first lien before a mortgage, if you have one, before second mortgages and other liens and judgments. They go on first along with the property taxes, and they will get paid eventually. So they really don't worry about it. If you don't pay, they'll get their money eventually, unless it's just a really crazy situation where the house is worth zero, or it's a toxic waste dump and it won't sell for anything in a foreclosure sale. They will get their money from you. So that's why you don't really have to worry about it going to your personal credit. But anyway, some landlords do choose to keep it in their name. They choose to have us pay the bill out of rent, and then bill to the tenant on their ledger, and it shows up as an extra charge on their online account through our rental management software, and then we collect it just like we're collecting the rent. Okay. Again, but if they don't pay it, you've already paid it. You're out the money. That can start to accrue, and again, you're at the problem of having to, do I want to evict this person because they didn't pay their water bill? That's really your only choice to get them to pay. So that's not really a good position to put yourself in, let alone, fronting money that should be paid by the tenants anyways. I think that people should avoid it. It complicates things. It's more difficult. You should make the tenant pay their own bill and pay it directly to the water company. And then another option is something called a budget. So in Cleveland, one of the issues is that, like I mentioned, the bills are usually come out every 90 days, and the water can really accrue really high in that period. So if you can, what we sometimes do is we can set the tenant up on a budget where they're paying every single month a certain amount, so an amount that we think would probably be about the typical family, that tenant size that's living in the property, what they would normally pay for water. Then what we can do is when we get the bill, we just look to see how much they paid and adjust their account. Just add an adjustment right into their account, plus or minus. So if they paid $100 a month, it's $300 they paid in the last 3 months. We just, and the bill came out and it was $250. We'll add a little credit in their account, and then the next month they pay $50 less, to account for that. And that way the tenant's happy. We're providing a service to them. We're helping make sure for the landlord that they're getting paid for this, and it ends up being a win-win. So that's one service we do offer to help make it easier. Now this has all been for single-family houses, how we deal with utilities. If it's not a single-family house, and utilities aren't divided, there's a whole different set of techniques for dealing with this, which I'll talk about in another video. All right, thanks for listening. Have a great day. Wish you a profitable landlording lifetime. Services. I want to talk today a little bit about multifamily properties, and specifically how to do utilities, how landlords should do utilities in multifamily properties. So utilities in Cleveland, Ohio are not complicated enough already with single-family homes. The whole process is made even more complicated when you have a multifamily property. So if the utilities are split, in other words, they're metered separately for each unit, then you're actually not that much different for those particularly split utilities than how you would handle them on a single-family property. And I did a video on utilities on single-family properties in Cleveland, Ohio too. However, you definitely run into a whole new, very different situations when you're dealing with utilities that are not split. And so a lot of the duplexes, quadplexes, triplexes in the Cleveland area, and even larger multifamily buildings, for some reason they decided to save money and make the landlord pay all the utilities because they weren't able to sub-meter, or they didn't do separate meters when they were building these properties. So that was very common. And I suppose that way back when a lot of these properties were built, 50 to 100 years ago, utilities were a lot cheaper. They're not the huge expenses, especially the last couple of years. Utilities have become. So landlords are looking to increase profit by shifting the utilities to the tenant. So As far as options, when your only options is when utilities are not, when the meters are not split or the utilities are not split or separately metered, are one, the owner has to pay the utilities. That's the first option. And it is the simplest option probably and the cheapest as far as upfront costs. However, it's with the expensive utilities recently, it's not always, the owners are looking for ways to shift this to the tenant. One option that people are asking about, and we've experimented a little bit with, is something called RUBS, also known as Residential Utility Billing System. RUBS is essentially, I'm sorry, it's not residential, it's ratio utility billing system. So basically what it is, it's a ratio that you create and you divide the bill up. That's essentially what it is. And normally it's divided, so you have a water bill, say, and there's 3 tenants, and you create kind of this arbitrary formula. Sometimes it's all based on the number of occupants. Other times it's weighted with the square footage of the different units, and then you put that into the ratio. And sometimes owners, a lot of times, will factor in a little bit for maybe common area, and they'll pay a portion of the bill as well and add that into it. So the benefit of RUBS is that it's easy and quick to set up. It can be complicated, but because you're adding in all these figures. A lot of property management software does actually compute the RUBS formula itself, but it's usually better to just simply use a simpler formula if you're going to split it up, because the tenants are definitely going to want to understand how they're getting a specific bill, and you want to be able to explain it to them. So you'll have to show them the original bill. And it can end up creating a lot of issues, because then tenants, this is the downside of RUBS. It's easy, it's the upside. The downside is that the tenants oftentimes distrust it because it's not based on true usage. So they're thinking, they get an extra big bill, and they're thinking, my gosh, I know I didn't use extra water this month. I think it's a leak, and I shouldn't have to pay for this. Or I think that the tenant upstairs had a boyfriend, that was staying overnight and using all this water, takes long showers, or whatever, the girlfriend takes long showers, that it's not on the lease and it wasn't calculated properly, or one tenant has special water needs. It just ends up being sometimes unfair. So you can be done, but in the times we've done it, and we've done it a few times, we've definitely had a lot of pushback from tenants. You're fighting against two things. Number one, a lot of tenants are used to not paying some of those utilities when they go to a multifamily property. And then you have the whole unfairness factor, that they don't feel like it's fair. So I don't recommend RUBS. It's something that we can do as a property management company, or you can do, but you definitely have to be careful with that. And then the third option is there's kind of third option A and B, but essentially to meter or sub-meter. So to meter it actually involves going to the utility company and asking them to put more meters in. Depending on the utility company, depending on the situation, that may or may not be possible. If it is possible, it's going to be probably very expensive and prohibitively expensive. You might as well just continue doing what you're doing. You may have to get city permits, special permits, and things of that nature, and variances and stuff like that. And sometimes it's just not possible. It's not allowed with this type of property to go ahead and put the meter in. You have to have outside third parties helping out with that. So the other option that's a lot less expensive in terms of getting actual readings is the sub-metering process. And so you can find sub-meters that essentially that you put them after the main meter for the utility supply. And you can do this for electric, water, and gas, but normally you're just doing it for water, because that's the big issue normally that's for meters not being split. You can get a water meter for $90 to $100. So if you have a triplex, you'd be out about $300 for the cost of those meters. Normally you're going to need to get a licensed plumber to go ahead and install those, and it's usually more than just, you know, dropping in, you know, cutting out a piece of pipe and dropping a meter in. Normally there's some rerouting that has to be made because, you know, you don't know exactly where the split was. You know, there could be a main water line that splits one way to go one place. You got to bring it all down. You might have to bring a line down closer to where the main water meter is to make it split, and you have to split both the hot water and the cold and all that. So there's some extra plumbing there, but oftentimes the actual metering can be pretty inexpensive. Also, there's options where you can get online readings. So you can get for a small amount extra, you can get a module that reads these meters and makes it available to a Wi-Fi system or through a router. Then it's available online and you can read it. Because that's the other option is problem with submetering is that you have to actually read it and split the bill. So you'll get a main bill and you use basically the ratio of the different usages in the submeters to calculate what the tenant's bill should be. That's the proper way to do it, not just go based on the readings, because you don't really know if your readings match up with the are going to match up with the utility company's readings. So you basically measure the different meters and calculate a ratio. One thing we've experimented with is, or starting to experiment with, is with the submeter, you could write into the lease that the tenant has to, that when the water bill comes in, we're going to split this equally between the tenants, and then whichever tenant wants to will take a picture of all 3 or 2 or whatever meters, send it to the management company, and then we'll issue credits based on the ratio. And that's a pretty simple calculation. We can do it in a couple minutes, put it onto their bill, and then everything's fair and equal. And you also know if there's any crazy water usage, or it allows you to ferret out issues of leaks and water usage issues in general. But with the internet reading system, you can actually get, there's some free Wi-Fi. We're just getting ready to experiment with it. So you can actually get free cellular internet, not free Wi-Fi, which will connect into these submeters. And you just have to pay for the unit, and if you go over like 500, a certain amount in a month, you have to pay for it. But as long as it's under a certain amount, and the utilities don't, this type of billing meter doesn't use that much data, you can actually get that connection for essentially free, other than paying for the equipment. So that's something that we're getting ready to experiment with. So I hope that gives you some information on how utility billing works. With our clients, we can give estimates and things of that nature in order to split utilities and work with you to make your property very profitable. Hello, I'm Andy Morris, and I wanted to talk about today how the drug CPH4 that turned Scarlett Johansson into a god in the movie Lucy will help you save money on drain cleaning for Cleveland, Ohio rental properties. So that's kind of a silly thing, but actually I got this little bag here, and if you watch the movie Lucy that just came out recently, she actually had this bag of drugs stuck in her stomach. It's called CPH4, and actually CPH4 exists, probably not blue, and it certainly doesn't make you into a all-knowing, time-traveling, godlike person, but but it looked kind of like this in the movie, and they cut her stomach open and stuck it in. Well, this would probably kill you a lot quicker than turning you into a god. It's called copper sulfate, and the way that it can help landlords save money when they're talking about 100-year-old drains in Cleveland, Ohio, and you're looking at maybe having to dig, or a $400 Roto-Rooter or something of that nature. This can help avoid some of those issues, because in our area we have big old trees, with roots growing into the sewer pipes, and those roots start to block things up. But normally they start slowly, and you'll start to notice things slowing, signs of that. And so if you can educate your tenants to contact you, you can bring this out or send it to them. We actually ship this to our tenants. Our tenants will call us. Or, if there's already been a drain issue, we'll use this to prevent more roots from growing, because if you remove roots, that means there's a tree, they're going to grow in there again. So anytime you have an idea that there might be root issues in your drain, this is relatively inexpensive. It's $15 to $30 for a couple pounds of this. We ship it, so we don't even have to charge our owners for delivering it and administering it. You flush it down your toilet. You just divide this into 4 parts. Each part of the bag is half a pound. You flush it down 4 times right in a row. It goes down, and and then in a few days, the roots, either the growth stops, or sometimes the roots that are already in there will disintegrate, and it'll free up your pipe. So that's one way to really help with plumbing. Another product that we use, and I don't have something to show you here, but I'll give you the name of it. It's called K97, and that's actually a bit less expensive, but it's very effective. It's slightly different use. What it does is it's a bacteria chemical solution that will actually digest paper, grease, and other waste particles clogging your drain. So it doesn't need to be roots, and I don't know if it really works on roots. It's not like a root killer, but it will actually digest what's in your drain and help free it up. So for 15, 20 bucks, you can again ship this to your tenant. And if they have, say, a slow drain, something where it's not an emergency, they call you up. And this is something that we do, is we'll send this out, and a good amount of time it can actually, you flush it in at night, you put it into the drain at night, in the morning the drain will be flowing much better. And this type of thing is actually probably a lot easier on your pipes than ramming down a big metal thingy, whatever, a snake, they call it a snake, but it's basically this, some of those snakes are like an inch, half inch, they're huge. And you're jamming that down the pipe. If you already got an old pipe system, you have a risk of it collapsing. So if you can fix your situation and greatly help it by this, it's much gentler on your plumbing system that may well be aging and be getting ready to collapse anyways. So these are ways that we help save our owners money, and you could use these same products to save money on your rental by yourself.
Attention landlords, are you interested in professional help, leasing, lease optioning, full service management, or acquiring more investment property? If so, please call 440-220-7300 or email us at sales@propertymanagementoh.com. To get tips, tricks, and relevant Cleveland, Ohio investment and landlord information, please visit propertymanagementoh.com/news and subscribe to our newsletter.